We're back, Alphas.
We're coming in hot with inspiring guests, witty banter, and colorful commentary for today's veterans and military community. This is the Tango Alpha Lima podcast.
All right, welcome, Alpha. Stacy is still out this week. Joe, what's she doing again?
I believe that she's defending her championship for the hot dog eating contest that she won.
That's right.
In,
She's going up against Joey Chestnut, which
Chestnut's
tough competitor.
Back.
He is the perennial winner, but she's going to give him a run for his dog. But Joe, while Stacy's out,
throwing down buns.
we have a couple of great guests joining us today.
Mm-hmm.
Steven Grayhm and Vondie Curtis Hall, who star in the upcoming film Sheepdog, which tells the story of Army veteran Calvin Cole, who is placed under the care of a student who's training to become a VA trauma therapist. Things get even more complicated when his father-in-law, a Vietnam War veteran, shows up on his doorstep after his release from prison. The movie, inspired by countless firsthand testimonials about recovery, redemption, and the journey to healing, that one's very important, explores the physical and psychological repercussions of trauma and focuses on post-traumatic growth. So I'm really excited for this one. I think not too many veteran and military films really focus on the journey to healing side and all the things that, we incorporate and talk about so much. So really excited to, and these guys are, they have been around the Hollywood big screen and small screen block, some of the most prominent films and projects and TV shows. Die Hard 2, Coming to America. I mean, the list goes on and on. So we'll have that in
both
online
good Christmas
in
movies.
bios. Yeah. But what do you got for us, Joe?
So this is our last episode of season 6, and it has been, as you know, dear listeners, quite a ride. The Tango team has big plans that we're excited to share with you for season 7, which will start in January. But we've also been thinking about where we've been the past year. My personal favorite guest from season 6 was Ken Burns. It was episode 284. And we were talking about, his American Revolution documentary. So the reason why I loved that interview is because I love anyone who works hard to be a master of the craft, because you've got people that are naturally gifted at something. It's obvious he's a natural storyteller, but he's also willing to put in the work. I can't imagine the amount of work it's taken throughout his entire life of just sheer research to do even one documentary. Just the concept of that alone is intimidating to me. And I write. But I write fiction, so if I don't know something, I can just make it up. Problem with documentaries is you can't do that. I'm so impressed by him and his easygoing demeanor and just such a natural interview. That was a really fun one. I've had a bunch of them though. That was maybe that one being a little more recent is one reason why it stuck out. But there were several really good interviews that we had this year. What about you, Adam? What's your favorite?
Yeah, I mean, I was super bummed to miss the Ken Burns one. We were really excited.
We talked about you.
Talking trash. We had to work, around his schedule and stuff, and I think, it just. But man, that was such a great episode, and you guys did such a good job on that one. I'm like you. I sometimes, we get the list, beforehand, or some of the guests, we kind of talk about, and some folks were, you don't know much about, and you get on and just completely, kind of floor you. So one that was a really big surprise to me that I didn't really know we were going to have until he got on was episode 255, how military veterans can find their tribe. But it was 4-star General Paul Funk and Colonel Adam Rock. And General Funk was one of the commanding generals at Fort Riley when I was there.
That was a good interview.
Yeah. That one unexpectedly hit me emotionally because that's the unit I went to war with. That's where I was a platoon leader. That's where I was a company commander, and he was the face of leadership. And it was just it was a cool moment, and it was completely unexpected. And so that one was personally meaningful to me. Another really cool one I really enjoyed was episode 277, From the Battlefield to the Grand Ole Opry with Scotty Hastings. And he's got such an incredible story of Army service, go Army, beat Navy, Purple Heart into now his music journey. His music journey is quite incredible. And I met him actually for an event a couple years ago just by happenstance in Nashville, and then pieced it together on the show that he was in here, that we connected through some mutual friends, and just to see his path and his storytelling. And I think storytelling through the podcast, but through his music and his shows. And then that's really what these opportunities are. Excuse me. Gosh, getting choked up. No, it's the storytelling of these episodes that's so powerful, and every episode carries some emotional weight and gravity to it, or interesting in its own regard. But those are a couple that jumped out, and there's one more sidebar that I'll put in, and that was the Sprouts guy. The Sprouts episode was so unexpected. It
Yeah.
was all the benefits of eating like a sprout-based diet, something I had given 0.000 seconds of thought to in my life, about how Sprouts could improve my general welfare. And I just thought he had such an incredible story of food insecurities and trauma, growing up, into how that impacted him and what he did
Yeah.
about it. And so that's like one of those ones where you just surprised, and you don't even know that how it's going to impact you.
And you add in that sort of thing in the back of everybody who serves mind, like, what if, what if I needed to feed my family? And he has a really a long-term solution. I mean, for that, it was really an impressive episode.
Yeah. So those are just a few of my favorites, but honestly, every episode, has its own place, and for sure.
Yeah. Well, so our team has gathered our favorites, and we'll be re-releasing interviews with some of our most memorable guests as bonus episodes over the holidays. Make sure you subscribe to the Tango Alpha Lima on Spotify, Apple Podcast, YouTube, or wherever you find podcasts, so you don't miss our countdown of 2025 and everything new that's coming your way in 2026. On the 18th of December, Ken Burns and Mary Gauthier Gaucher. I mean, good Lord. Mandatory Fun Day on the 22nd.
Nailed it.
With Austin and Dr. Tina Burke, and then on the 23rd, Kim and Samuel and Colonel Lee Ellis. So we're going to be promoting those. Those are super incredible interviews. I personally think that I was mentioning when we were going through the sort of pre-show that I need to finish that American Revolution documentary. I started in on it, and then life got caught up, and I love that era of America. It's such an interesting time, heartbreak and love, and Ken Burns did a fantastic job of going through and sharing some of that. So, but we'll have links for that in the show notes as well, and we make sure you check all this stuff out, because it's really, really, really good, incredible, informative stuff.
Well, I'm excited for what we got ahead, like you said, for season 7. But before we get to season 7, we're going to close out season 6. So stick around, and we'll be back with the new movie Sheepdog, stars of the new movie Sheepdog, Steven Grayhm and Vondie Curtis Hall, right after the break.
This year we have a golden opportunity. No, make that a red, white, and blue opportunity to do something truly special.
That's right, Commander. This year America is celebrating its 250th birthday.
And the American Legion family will be leading the nationwide celebrations.
The American Legion Family USA 250 Challenge is a year-long celebration honoring our nation. You can participate in the challenge by choosing one or more of the 3 categories.
The 3 categories are community service, mental wellness, and physical activity.
Whether you are doing 1, 2, or all 3 categories, you are making a difference in the lives of veterans and their families.
Visit legion.org/USA250 to learn more and register for $30. For your registration fee, you will get to choose a commemorative tech shirt, and your donations support the American Legion Veterans and Children Foundation.
Be a part of what makes our nation great.
Help us celebrate America.
Join us in the USA 250 Challenge.
All right, today we are joined by the stars of the new movie Sheepdog. I am so excited. If you have not seen the trailer, go pause us and go watch the trailer right now. It's going to give you chills. With Steven Grayhm and Mr. Vondie Curtis Hall. Fellas, welcome to the Tango Alpha Lima podcast.
Hey, welcome.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks for having us. Great.
Absolutely.
Gentlemen, it's great to have you both here. We were just kind of talking a little bit before we kicked off about the parallels in the work and the excitement around this film. It's really unlike most of the veteran films that are out there. It's intimate and emotionally raw, and while other veteran films might land in that area, this is grounded in real testimonies, and it really focuses on the journey of healing, explores the physical and psychological repercussions of trauma, and this one, very important, focuses on post-traumatic growth. Well done. I would like just a little bit, maybe first, and Steven, maybe we can start with you and then go to Vondie, just a little bit about your background and what led you, to this film. And I think, the main question to land on is, what was the spark that led each of you to this story? Steven?
Sure. Yeah, sure. That's a great question. So, as a young child, I grew up, my grandfather was widowed. He moved into our family's house, and I had bunk beds, and I slept on the top bunk, and at night I would fall asleep to his stories. He was a Polish farmer that was held captive on his land during the Nazi takeover of Poland. And so he was a POW for 5 years, and just underwent, just the most horrific challenges that a human can face. And he often told the story of the American and Allied troops liberating them. And of course, if that didn't happen, I wouldn't be here. So I think growing up with that already in your bloodline, you kind of, it's going to come out somewhere in terms of feeling that there's maybe a debt to pay or a love letter to write. And so in 2011, my car broke down 3 hours north of LA, and the local tow truck driver that picked me up, we had a 3-hour drive into town, and he began to open up about, the challenges he was facing in his life between, his marital issues, being the father of 3, his financial hardship. And then he began to open up about all the various medications that he was on through the VA that were tethered to his military service, to his deployments. And, I was very quiet on that drive, and I just listened. And when I got back to LA, I've said this before, and I really mean it. I saw a look in his eyes that I was certain that there was probably comfort in him likely never seeing me again. And that was kind of the lesson in the moment, which was listening without prejudice, and how much easier it is to share with somebody who's a stranger. Because throughout that drive, he kept saying to me, I've never told my wife this. I haven't even told a therapist this. So that was that's what lit the spark, to answer your question. And I do think it was not just a sense of curiosity, but it felt like a sense of responsibility. So it was that summer that I set out on the road to meet with veterans across the country, anyone who would speak to me, mental health professionals. And that began to lay the foundation for what would become Sheepdog.
Wow.
Thank you, Steven. Vondie?
Yeah. What drew me to it was first the script, and I am from the Vietnam era, so I knew a lot of my closest friends coming out of high school who joined, did not come back. One was gone within 6 months of his deployment to Nam, and and then seeing them come back in the climate of anti-war climate, and the elimination of the draft, and that was all sort of my period. And then, as I mentioned in another interview, to this day, having friends who are recovering from cancer from Agent Orange. This summer I was with one of my friends who, so so that drew me to it, and the character, being able to play someone so I could represent, you know, my age group and those people that I knew, and the pain that they had coming back without the ticker tape parade. So that was what drew me to the project.
If I can just reflect on kind of the arc that's emerging from kind of both your responses, and I think you just kind of landed on it too, Vondie, and that's where you started, Steven, with your grandfather's, service, what he endured, and went through, and that generation, right? How that permeates through, through the stories at that home that, fill the foundation, the time period that you came back, Vondie, and what that climate was like, and how military folks were coming home and not being received. And then, subsequently, Steven, that's quite a moment with that specific individual. And I've never heard anybody express it like that, but it makes so much sense, the openness and vulnerability that he could have in that moment by knowing that he's never going to see you again. Yeah. And then also, we didn't talk about, which we'll get into, is both of your rich and illustrious careers on the big screen and the silver screens in front of cameras and behind cameras that gave you the skill sets and abilities to either identify this role of Vondie and be drawn to it, or Steven to be able to start pinning it and putting it together. So thank you.
And I just want to jump in here and say to you specifically, Steven, to be in a moment that you realize was such a sincere and vulnerable moment, and then not only use it as a moment to reflect, but also to take action. That's huge. I love when we start an interview and I immediately get a sense that some people are broad and some people are deep. And not to say that you're not broad people with multiple skill sets, but I see a depth in both of you that makes me think that this interview could go on for 3 hours and we would still have things to say. But I won't subject you to be hanging out with us that long. But I do want to say, your careers, you've worked with acting giants, including the Terry Crews, who's been relevant for, I don't think people realize how long that guy's been relevant, but he's been loved for so long. But you being able to take these people that you've been with and to carry on these careers the way that you have, creating powerful scenes dealing with veteran isolation and pain, which is prevalent in what we know of Sheepdog so far. How do you balance the artistic demands of acting with the responsibility of accurately representing the mental health challenges faced by real service members? And so we had an interview with a gentleman named Bart Walmack, who previously put it, how do you choose between real and real, R-E-E-L versus R-E-A-L, which I love that, but you have to find a balance between those two. How did you do that? What was your method there?
I think the easiest answer to that is that you don't overthink it. You can overthink it on the page, right? Because you got to do your research and get it right. But by the time you get to set, you have to trust it. With decades-long research and development, you have to trust what's on the page. And so I tried to do my best to refine and distill the story over the years. And, as I got older, the character got older, and then it, like, there was variations of this that had deployments in them, and and they were well written and well researched and everything. And 6 months prior to going to camera with funding issues, I had to remove them or I wouldn't be able to make the film. And that behooved us because I had written them. I was able to see them and embody them in how what was told to me. So the idea really was this. The best answer I have is I just never overthought it. I had to trust that the stories that were shared with me over all the years were already inside of me, and that, and maybe why we often get, as a cast, as an ensemble, we often get feedback that, Mike Rowe said it on his podcast to me a few weeks ago, that that it feels like a great documentary. And that's not because it's shot guerrilla style, because it's not. I mean, we're a low budget film, but it's like sort of classically shot as a film would be made. But the performances are nuanced and very grounded, and that came through all the casting for sure. So, you do rehearsal, which Mr. Hall can talk about, to just like make sure that you're there and you can make some discoveries before you put it in front of the camera, and then you just go for it. So I think that was a big part of it, is not to overthink it.
And Mr. Hall, I have to say, what really stood out to me watching the trailer was the raw emotion. I don't know what you tapped into with that, but I am so excited to see it, because and I'm sorry, because there's no way that somebody can put that kind of emotion on film without knowing what it feels like. So, my heart goes out to you. I don't know where exactly you tapped into that, but I want you to know that I see it, and I'm really looking forward to seeing it. Why am I getting emotional right now? Sorry. I'm easy.
An emotional journey. but an uplifting journey as well. And there's humor in the film. So it's a great arc. The story, the narrative, the post-traumatic growth. I mean, I think it's a great movie.
My question is a little bit about what has been revealed to you personally through the involvement with the project and the different roles. And in Vondie, maybe from you, it's more from the Vietnam veterans and what you were able to kind of honor in your performance. Mm-hmm. And then I'm sure with this project, really having that spark in 2011 to where we're at now. 14 years later, it's been quite a journey. So I'm sure there's a lot of truths that have emerged, over these decade and a half. I'm sure joining it at different parts. But what was kind of like revealed to you, and maybe there was some, preparation that led to the emergence of that truth, or, some kind of, connection or insight that you would share with the listeners.
Is that for me or for Steven?
Yeah, I think both of you, honestly, and whoever wants to jump in first.
Well, I'll let Steven go, because the 14-year journey certainly been long.
So you're like you're asking like what like sort of sticks with you?
Yeah. I mean, what it's such a journey in this development of it. So what tapping in, to this world, what are the truths that kind of revealed themselves to you, or one of the main ones that you take away?
Okay, so early on, I would say with the first veteran that we sat down with in McAllen, Texas, Matt Dallas went on the road with me. He plays my co-star, my best friend in the film, and we were very idealistic. We were like, I'm going to change the world. We're going to get the answers. So we set up a camera, and the veteran that we were speaking with was very honest and open. It was a beautiful conversation. And then we shut the camera off, broke for lunch, and that's where the real story happened. And that's where that veteran said, "Hey, so you're the screenwriter? Come over here. I want to talk to you about something." And he opened up about the military operation that loosely inspired what my character talks about in the film. So I found that oftentimes throughout my journey, it's in the things sometimes that we don't say. And I wanted that to be in the film, that it's those quiet moments, And when he shared that with me, that was, that's where it became very real and very personal. But I will say, like, a major takeaway, and this is what I really want, like, civilians to understand, is that, like, it's ordinary people in extraordinary circumstances. And that's really hard for a lot of folks to, like, wrap your head around. Like, what is it actually like to be in a foreign country, in a sheep pen, in a village, in the middle of the night, jumping over 6-foot cinder block walls, not knowing what's on the other side. What happens if your comms aren't working? What happens? Like, anything can go wrong, and it does. And you're playing the ultimate extreme sport. Like, there's real fear. And the men and women that I sat in front of, and like that humanity, is like, we lose that because, and I wanted to show that in the film because it's not to be glossed over. Like, you know, Joe, even as somebody who's, you know, has a prosthetic leg, you know, I met with men and women that have had your experience, and like, you're still Joe that came back home with that experience. And then what does that mean for you? And that to me in my research was like, it humanized it so much where, you know, in what other world do you know somebody that has had that experience, you know, and my character talks about it when the gate comes down on the bird, when you can feel the heat on your face, the smell of the air, it becomes very real. It's not necessarily G.I. Joe, you know? And I remember, you know, a veteran saying to me, just to wrap up on this point, of like, I think he might have been where you were, Joe. I think he was in Fallujah. And like that summer, his friends were like barbecuing back in Kentucky, you know, just, and the thought of that, of like, he could have had that, and he's there serving his country. And I think it's very hard when we really talk about sacrifice and service, like, especially when you're in your early 20s, and this goes for all generations, even the Vietnam era, of like what that really means to be away from your family. You know, I mean, both of my brother-in-laws are combat veterans, my wife's brothers. And my one of my brother-in-laws, his last deployment was in 2016 in Afghanistan. And it was nerve-wracking. Like, I now really understand what it's like to, like, if casualties come in and everyone's racing around to find out, and then you hear it's, you know, he's a Green Beret, and you're trying to figure, like, it's scary, and it puts everybody on edge for 9 months until he's stateside. And living through all of that and understanding that, I think it just brought out, I think I had empathy in the beginning with the tow truck driver, but I definitely think it brought out my humanity to fully understand what it really is to say, you know, what a sacrifice or what a hero is, because that takes courage.
And Steven, like, as somebody who's like lived, you know, those things that you're describing in the service, but I would, you know, never really take the time to pour it out and describe it almost like so poetically as you have. And it is, I mean, it's very like almost therapeutic just to listen to you talk about our experiences in that way. And like, as I'm sitting right here, I'm just thinking about how do you like mechanically translate those into, you know, the actual filming and recording, into the delivery of this, you know, piece. But thank you for that. We need this, we need the storytellers to
It
tell
makes us feel
stories.
heard, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
in ways that I don't think that we think that other people can really acknowledge. An example would be the difference between listening and hearing. You know, it's we talk all the time to try and support what veterans do, and then every once in a while you realize it matters. That conversation that gentleman had with you in that car was the kickoff for where we are right now. And you never know, a simple conversation for you could be a core memory for someone else. And so it's important to have these moments of vulnerability when you feel safe with someone. So you, in that moment, he needed to talk, and you were safe to talk to, maybe because you were going to go away and never see him again. But, you know, whether he knew it or not, thousands and thousands of people are going to know his story now, at least through the spirit of what you're doing. So I didn't want to jump off because, Adam, I didn't know if, you know, Mr. Hall,
No,
you
that was
wanted to
great.
jump in
I
on
was
that
gonna
as well.
kind of flip it over to you, Vondie. Has there been other roles that you had to dig into military culture and personas before, or, you know, what as far as preparing and digging into this role, like what's something that kind of stands out to you?
Well, just in terms of digging into this, I've played some. I think I did a John Woo movie where I was in the military. I've done some military stories, but that's shoot 'em up. That's the GI Joe. I played a lot of GI Joes. Not a lot of GI Joes, but
Yeah.
um, but some of the stories. I mean, speaking of talking about that kind of DNA, my father was a master sergeant, and my name, he named me after someone who saved his life. So my name Vondie is the person who's someone who saved his life, and he says, as Stephen mentioned, I wouldn't be here if it weren't for that person. So there's that kind of DNA that in the stories he didn't talk a lot about it, actually, but the little bit I could get out of him was really resonated with me, and so and that's the thing. So many people, they get back, like my uncle, my father, my friends who came back. They didn't really talk a lot about it. They just didn't want to deal, and so yeah. So I played some GI Joes, but nothing resonates more than the real people who were in it, and sacrificed, and were saved, or saw someone die in front of them, holding them in their arms, or as in the movie said, talks about someone turning into pink mist, next to them. So those are the things that are real about it.
Well, you really touched on something that I want to circle back to in my next question, but I know Joe's itching to fire another one away.
I've only got about 400 questions, so we'll get started on them. So I think that if you guys had been given $1 billion, the movie wouldn't have the heart that it has. And I hate that you guys had to fight through what you did, but I am an author and I write fantasy. I'm not plugging my book. I'm saying this because I wrote out an entire scene that was very emotional, and I thought that was some of my best writing, and I couldn't use it. It just wouldn't work. But it developed the character in a way that it made everything I did from then on easier. So you having those combat scenes and this overseas deployment moments already built out in your head grounded the character in something that was real, that you were able to build from. And so for me, when I got my cover back, we had already paid the guy, and they had designed this thing. And when I got the cover back, there was something that was completely mixed up from what was intended on the cover. And instead of fighting with that guy, which would have been more expensive, I changed a part of my story, and it's one of my favorite things in the story now. And so this necessity breeding is the mother of innovation. You guys did something instead of having this money and being able to do all this big stuff. It's like, we've got to do the heart. That's what we've got to do. We've got to hit this story, and these characters need to feel real. So this micro production budget, you're focused on authenticity. What was the payoff? Because, for me, when I finished writing that one scene, I was like, now this clicks. It all makes sense. I would love to hear from both of you that moment when you kind of stand up and you're like, I mean, I kind of did a killer job, right? And you can't say that, but you stand up and you go, yeah, I kind of killed that. That was fantastic.
What I would say, look, there's been profound moments over the last year on the film festival circuit where, we sold out across the country, from everywhere from Florida to Omaha to Iowa to California to Texas to New York, Boston, everywhere. And having a Vietnam veteran stand up in the audience and say, "You effing nailed it," and just sit back down in tears. Having, even in Naples, Florida, a World War II veteran, I think he was 102, and he was with his entire family, and he hugged me in tears and whispered in my ear, and he just said thank you. Having the OIF and OEF vets stand up with their families and in tears and just saying, I wish I had this movie 10 years ago when I got out. I wish I had it to show my family so they could see why I am the way I am, but also why they are the way they are. So I think that to me, because we made it for them, we made it for you guys, right? And then we made it for your communities and your families, and to help tell your stories carefully and authentically and honestly. So I think that, like, look, like, we still got a mountain to climb. You know, Sheepdog comes out nationwide in January, and you know, we really hope it finds an audience. We really hope folks, you know, we're partnered with VetTix, as you know, VetTix and First
nice.
Tix. So it's the first movie they've ever partnered with, and I'll just share this information, and I'm sure we can put it in the body of this. But if you go to sheepdogthemovie.com, you can pay it forward. The link will take you right to VetTix. It's 100% tax deductible. VetTix will then distribute tickets through Fandango to veterans, first responders, and their families to see Sheepdog in theaters in January. So, you know, stuff like that is just like, what an incredible honor. And Steve Weintraub over at VetTix has just been a huge champion of the film. And, you know, we shot a spot with him that just came out on Giving Tuesday yesterday. So, so we're still climbing the mountain here. We're still pushing that boulder up. And, you know, I think, you know, I don't know if the brushing the dust off your shoulder moment, that certainly hasn't happened yet. But I would say it would be pretty great that the film was received in January and it gets out there and it can help people and people can relate to it and it can spark a conversation, you know, whether you're leaving the theater and you go out to dinner or whether you're driving home in the car. I've heard so many stories like that from our festival circuit run where people have reached out to us. And I'd also like to say just really quickly too that Lieutenant Colonel David Grossman, who we quote in the opening of the movie, the Sheepdog quote, he wrote me a beautiful email the other day. I sent him a screener to the film and gave his full endorsement and to even call me brother, like a Sheepdog brother, was very emotional because I feel like that metaphor that we took wasn't that metaphor at home was the wolf at your door, right? Calvin was protecting the flock in his service, and the wolf was the enemy. And at home, that wolf at his door was the trauma that he was dealing with. And I think that you can open that metaphor up to the other characters, especially Mr. Hall's character in the film, of protecting the flock.
Well, I think it's gonna find an audience, and I think one of the reasons I want to uncover just a little bit more, and that's about the focus on the post-traumatic growth. Because kind of to your point, Vondie, it wasn't just a G.I. Joe 80s and 90s movie that we all grew up on, and that's what we took to war with us. But none of those, they just showed the broken veteran, you know, born on the 4th of July and, you know, maybe Forrest Gump, like a little bit, like on the other side. But you know, the work that it was talking about in veteran mental health advocacy to find these programs and these therapies, like lives were lost from our literal brothers, you know, brothers in arms and service members while we're just doing what we're told to do. But then there's this whole network and community of treatments, and then there's this moment in time where it's no longer a life sentence. You're able to return and become whole again in ways that you didn't know was achievable. You can show up in your community. You can be that husband and father. You can pour out from a full cup. And this part of the story is so untold because we've had to figure out ways to make it through there. So, Steven, I mean, 14 years of interviews and research. I know that we started our first nonprofit in 2015. I had to learn about the neuroplasticity of the brain. I'm like, I'm an Apache helicopter pilot. What do I know about this? I become an expert in things I didn't even know possible. So I know you have, kind of too. Um, what was kind of high level what you would share about, learning the science, learning about, the community and the heart, and bringing that to film? We talked about all those things, but there's this underlying, kind of offering of how to heal from these things that you're presenting in a way that hasn't been done before. That's of interest to me, and I think to our community.
Well, I think just on the technical side of things, like having an office at the VA for several years at the VA Medical Center in Detroit, I was role playing with trauma therapists, neurologists, neuropsychologists for years to like really understand. And I didn't want to truncate the story to make it an industrial film. It had to be entertaining, of course, and moving and so on. But it was critical that it was well informed. And I spent some time at the Center for Brain Health in Dallas, and then of course, some of the VA shelters, the one in Detroit and across the country. So that informs sort of that technical side, but just things like 2011, I became very close with a Gold Star mother whose son, again, his legacy was killed in action June 4, 2008. And that's loosely inspired the sheep pen
Debbie Lee?
story.
Is that Debbie Lee?
No, that's Boniva Jacquet is her name.
Okay.
But Debbie Emmerd, that's another Gold Star mother whose son was killed in that pen. And of course, the Duffy family, Shane Duffy. So the Gold Star mother, Boniva, I'd only met her. We're 3 months into our friendship, and she was invited to the White House to do a Gold Star family members event where you go and hang a Christmas ornament on the presidential tree. And I didn't feel like I had earned the moment. So I was like, let me earn this. You take somebody in the family, and she's like, no, you need to be there and you need to see this for yourself. Mm-hmm. And I think that like being in that room as all these families that were standing in the White House, just watching on a projection TV as their loved ones came up in service and hearing the gasps, it's almost like they were reliving it all over again. And then having like a child come up to me who's wearing a t-shirt with her deceased brother in uniform on it, and just trying to hold it together to be strong for her. And she's just like trying to tell me a story about her brother, and I'm all ears. I get down on a knee and I'm just listening. And I think that those sorts of things, like just they stay with you forever for the rest of your life, but also really inform the tonality of how I was even going to direct my wonderful cast, of like what this took. And Mr. Hall, I will share this story to this, and I won't get too far off a path here, but when my character is describing Mr. Hall's character's son's service and what happens to him during his service, Boniva, she had known this, but I had met with multiple people in her son's unit, his even, guys that were in his team, in his squad. And I had been given the Oakley eyewear that her son had on his body when he was killed in action. It literally had specks of dust from the terrain there. And I kept it. I'm not going to get emotional either, but it leads to this. And I kept it safe in a box. And I never opened it, right? Because what do you do with something like that, right? But I brought it to set, not knowing, is this what do we do? And I remember when Boniva came on set, and because she's in one of the scenes, but she was there on set, and I opened it up and I put it into Mr. Hall's hands. And then I told Mr. Hall the story, put it back in the box, and I returned it to its rightful owner. which is Beneva, who's there on set, and then we rolled camera on the scene where that's where Mr. Hall's character is learning about his son's service. And so it's stuff like that like you never think after 14 years of meeting somebody, and then, you know, and that's just an incredible honor, and just, you know, Mr. Hall's performance is just stunning.
I'm already too excited for this movie, and you're only increasing the impatience. I don't look at trailers for movies that I know I'm going to want to see until I can watch it, usually, or at least until I'm like a week out. So this is killing me.
That's amazing. Yeah, all of us are feeling that anticipation, and it's been a long haul. You know, it's been a long haul, but we have, just in your sentiment there, it's been, my God, an honor, and well worth it, and you know, and we're just, as challenging as this journey has been, I'm just so grateful, because everything that could go wrong making the movie went wrong, right?
Yeah.
But everything that could go right in the storytelling, it was captured. And that's why I said, when we talked earlier in the preamble, just, if you gave me $20 million right now, if you lost all the footage and were like, go reshoot this, and, you know, here's $20 million, I wouldn't take your money. There's no way. Like, there's just no way of how it all came together, you know, under this pressure cooker, you know, and it was
Perfect
captured on
storm
screen.
Come together that way.
Yeah,
Pressure.
for a moment
Creativity.
in time. Yeah.
So one last question. We're very low on time here,
Sure.
but I did want to ask one more. You know, you guys have both found in your life opportunities to serve, you know, filmmaking and mentoring for you, Mr. Hall. But what is a piece of advice for those people that think that they can't make a difference, those people that are coming out of the military, or people that want to find different ways of being a part of sharing stories? What is a piece of advice you would offer a veteran listening right now who's looking to transition from this military discipline that they're a part of right now into a creative field like writing, directing, and acting? What kind of encouragement could you give someone who's looking to do that transition themselves?
Is that Steven, or who you want to take?
That has to be you, Mr. Hall. That's to give us some sage wisdom. We all need it. Yeah.
I
love this interview, y'all. I seriously love this.
Yeah, it's great. It's a great interview, and I feel like we could talk forever. It's really great in talking about the movie, and you guys, your service. Thank you for that, and just your spirit and your hearts are just, you know, moving through the screen to me. I would say start and do something every day, a little thing every day.
Yes.
Toward your vision, your dream. And this, you don't have to have so much money now to get your story out there. There's so many ways to be storytellers. And so do something every day. And the difference between, you know, this journey and just a little bit every day and where that ends, you know, in a year or 2 years or 5 years is enormous. So that would be my advice.
Well,
it's incredible.
Sage advice. And echo the same sentiments as everybody else. It's been an absolute pleasure to have both of you here and spend this time with us. Mr. Hall, I'll go to you first, and then Steven, is there anything you want to share with our listeners that we didn't have the opportunity to discuss before we close out?
No, just I watched the movie again. We had a big screening in New York. We had screenings in LA and New York with Q&A after them. And I was at the New York one. We had a nice full house. And I saw the film again. And I would just urge, it was such a treat. And I've seen it a few times. And just the watching this movie is just a wonderful experience. So, I would encourage anybody who can see it to see it.
And I would say, and thank you, Mr. Hall. I would say those screenings were great, and the feedback was just so amazing. I would just say, if you're someone out there listening right now, that feels alone in your experience, to know that you don't have to do it alone. That there are so many services that are out there, and programs, community outreach that's there, and it can just start with something as simple as like picking up the phone or sending a text to somebody you served with who maybe you haven't spoken to in a long time and might really want to hear from you, and because I think that connective tissue is really important, and sometimes can be incredibly challenging. So I would say that, just on a very simple level. And then for civilians, I really do believe that, when you do meet a veteran, just asking how they are, or tell me a little bit about your service, can go a really long way and build a relationship. And I count all the veterans that I have in my life that I consider family now, to be some of the most wonderful, loyal people that I could ever have the good fortune to be in the company of. And then lastly, I would just say that, as we said, Sheepdog is in selected theaters in December this month, and then it will go nationwide in January. So to check your local listings. And then you can also go to sheepdogthemovie.com. We have a partnership with Vetix. As we said, go to Vetix. If you're not a member yet, sign up. Whether you're getting tickets, donated tickets for Sheepdog, or for a local sporting event or a music concert, it's a wonderful platform. And they are just such a wonderful group of people over there. So I just want to thank you all so much for sharing your platform with us and shining a light on the plight of our veterans.
That's great.
You guys have been an absolute blessing. We can't thank you guys enough. Steven, Vondie, this means a lot to spend this time with us. Time is the one thing that you're going to run out of no matter what. So Alphas, make sure that you go to Vetix and get your tickets, or maybe be a blessing for somebody else, and stick around for some scuttlebutt after the break.
The reason that I'm serving, because not only we serve our nation, we serve individual units, we serve individual veterans and their family. And so service doesn't end when you're not on active duty. And matter of fact, it actually increases, because there's a need throughout the United States for veterans and their family. And so I want to do my part as long as I have the physical and mental capability. And as you notice on my jacket, it says servant leader. And so to answer your question, that's what leaders do, we serve. And so here we are in Washington, D.C.
Can you go?
Oh, we got plenty more.
Okay.
I'm already here.
Okay.
All right, Alphas, we hope you had a great break. Now it's time for some scuttle bootay.
All right, Joe, I just want you to know that soldiers in the Army will receive a check-in from their leadership each day during the holiday season to combat suicide and self-harm. Army Secretary Daniel Driscoll announced in a memo that was disseminated across the force in November. Through January 15, 2026, an officer or NCO will check in on every soldier daily to see if they need help. Driscoll said in the memo, with a plea for those struggling to pick up your phone and accept help during a season, he said could leave people especially at risk. In the memo, which has since been posted and widely shared on social media, Driscoll, who served in the Army, recounted his own struggles during Ranger School. Ranger School's winter mountain phase nearly broke me. I slipped and fell, couldn't get up, and the cold crushed me. I was done in that moment. But my Ranger buddies picked me up and helped me start moving again, he said. adding, "That was the inflection point for me. I realized no one can go through life alone. We all break eventually, and we need each other." Driscoll called on the force to prioritize supporting each other during the holiday season and noted grim statistics. "Last year, we lost 260 soldiers to suicide," he said, adding that signing those letters of condolence and knowing we could have helped is heartbreaking. "I wish we never had to write another one." The 2023 annual report on suicide in the military conducted by the Department of Defense found that 523 service members across different branches and components of service died by suicide during the calendar year. This is really interesting because we report so much on veteran suicide, but like these numbers are shocking and alarming on the active side. The report also found that young enlisted male soldiers, not surprising here, tallied the most suicide deaths, and that suicide rates for active duty service members gradually increased between 2011 and 2023. At the bottom of Driscoll's memo, he included QR codes that link to mental health support. Troops, veterans, and family members experiencing suicidal thoughts can call the 24-hour suicide and crisis lifeline at 988 and dial 1. You can text 838-255 or visit the veteranscrisisline.net. It's a really those numbers are alarming, and yeah, I mean, I think for me specifically too, I was unaware of that tally. I'm more familiar with the veteran statistic, which is honestly anywhere from 17 to 44 a day. It's about 6,000 a year every year for the last 20 years without statistical change. But this is indicative of, young males, right? The why that population group, it's hard in that environment, in that culture, to ask for help. It's not really built in that way. I mean, there's help when you've fallen and you're like, executing on a target, right? So
Yeah.
there's like there's tactical help, but then there's this perceived weakness, the mental health moniker being taken away from the active duty tasks, that you're assigned to, and therefore it's just going to be easier for me to take this on and suffer in silence. And so I think this is really kind of breaking through that. And it's hard when you do like a forced letter where everybody's going to call and you're going to check in every single day, and sometimes that may be received by the troops in different ways, but it's like, what do you do to be able to actually move the needle? Like, you have to take extreme
Yeah.
measures at some point to really combat this.
It's not, unfortunately, it's not the people that are going to get irritated by this that need the help. It's the people that, that really need it, that this is for, obviously. I just want to say also that if you'll look at that time frame of the gradual increase, that's also the time frame that social media became more prevalent. And I say that not against social media. I think social media is a fantastic way to stay in touch with people that you don't have access to otherwise. But it's created this false sense of connection that doesn't truly feel real in your heart. And so an example would be when I shoot you a message to say, "Hey man, how's the family doing," or whatever, or I message you on Instagram, say, "Hey, your family looks great." You get this thing in your head like, "Okay, cool. I don't need to check in on Adam. That was me making contact." But it doesn't work that way. You need to hear someone's voice. You do. You do. And there's nothing that's going to make me feel better when I'm upset than having somebody that I care about there for me. I'm a hugger, so for me it's a hug, but not everybody's that way. Sometimes somebody just wants to sit down and watch a movie or sit in front of a fire or go on a road trip. You need those moments of touch point contact, true touch point contact. We used to have those all the time because that was the way that the world was. And now the world, it's easier to get this false sense of check-in where you think how somebody's doing because they posted a picture of themselves smiling. You're like, "Hey, you look great. We should get together soon." cool, yeah. And then, how many times has somebody done something like that? And then a week later, somebody's like, oh my gosh, did you hear about so-and-so? We all know personal stories just like that. Social media is not real social. It's just not. You got to touch. You got to touch. You got to get in front of people, man.
You said something that really landed with me, and that is that people who are frustrated or bothered, by the calls, it's kind of like, so what? That's not the purpose of all this, and we will gladly take that on. We will gladly take your frustration, get in line and receive this call every day. Why? Because potentially, if this broken over 12, potentially 100 lives could be saved. I mean, that's a whole infantry company. Like like a whole infantry company is like potentially on the line of being wiped out this holiday season. And when you can put it in that way, then it's like you'd welcome it. You'd
If we
welcome
lost
the opportunity.
100 soldiers or Marines somewhere, the whole world would know about it.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
you lose one,
yeah,
2, 15.
there would be. We would start a whole war over something like that. So
I'm throwing that number arbitrarily out there. 523 service members in 2023. So maybe potentially 20. Over the course of the month, maybe more, because it happens more in isolation, out of community, disconnected.
And not to forget our our sailors and airmen too. I didn't want to. I mentioned Army and Marines, but really, I think in some ways, I got to speak a couple of weeks ago at Thanksgiving for a unit up in New Mexico, and when I was going through a little bit of my story, I there were no like looks of pity. There was looks of understanding. That's my least favorite thing to see out there. When I'm talking about my story and the struggles I've been through, I want to see people. I'd rather somebody look at me and feel a little bit of pity for what I've gone through, which I don't want. But I'd rather have that than have that look on their face that they know, like they get it.
Mm-hmm.
That breaks my heart. And our Air Force guys out there, our sailors out there, the things that you've been through, the harder parts up here. I'm missing a leg. Well, I'm not missing. I knew where it went, but this is the hard part. It really is. It's really the hard part. And it doesn't get easier with time. It's not something that you can just push away. And, it's not like a cold. It's not like being a little bit down in the dumps. It's a legitimate thing that has to be fought. So, fight.
Well said, Joe. Well said. All right, Alphas, remember to be the one. Keep doing buddy checks as well. This is something that we can do within our own ranks. Check in on your veterans, check in on your friends and your peers and your family and your friends, and find those opportunities to be in community one another this season as well. Joe, what you got for us?
So, accredited American Legion service officers secured a record $23,289,379,651 in disability benefits for veterans in fiscal 24 to 25, according to newly released data. American Legion service officers do not charge veterans for the representation in the VA claims process. So if you are yourself struggling and are intimidated by this, call the American Legion. Call the American Legion. So 2025 total brings the amount of disability benefits achieved for veterans using accredited American Legion service officers to $108.7 billion since 2020. And so far in the new fiscal year, the Legion's network of more than 3,000 accredited service officers has not slowed down, having helped disabled veterans and qualified dependents receive more than $2 billion in October alone. The awards include disability compensation, pensions to include death and survivor benefits, dependency and indemnity compensation, and spina bifida benefits. They do not include education and veteran readiness benefit programs. But let's break that down so you get an idea of how much money we're talking about. What can you buy? What would you buy with $1 billion, Adam?
I love that clip where Kanye's in there with Joe Rogan, and he's like, "How much does the whole Earth cost?" He goes, I'm gonna buy it. He's talking about the invention of money, but yeah, buy with $1 billion. Man, honestly, mine is is not so materialistic on what I would buy.
Yeah.
It's how I would invest it, and I would invest it into these veteran nonprofit organizations that have emerged over the last 10 years that are providing all these new therapies and conducting all the research. And I would like funnel it into that to scale like the impact that they're having. That's how I would use $1 billion.
You know, it's funny because you go through a stage. I think for me, it hit when I was 40, where I wanted peace instead of like things and like, you know, if I had $1 billion, I'd buy a mansion in LA, you know, or something like that. It's not that anymore. I'm very happy where I'm at. Not to say I wouldn't buy something nice, but I want to travel. I would love to be like, hey, Adam, let's go to Greece. You know, I would just love to be able to do something like that. But also to be able to reach out to veterans and give them an opportunity to live their dreams. You know, I mean, it would be so cool to help people with business ideas and things like that, and to give them training, not necessarily
like an
to
innovation fund.
Yes, that would be really cool. But what you can do with $1 billion outside of spending it all on automated dining facilities is, throughout the U.S., the average person spends about $1,600 per month on rent. If you had $1 billion, that would cover your rent for the next 50,968 years. Do you like cars, Adam? You like cars?
Oh yeah,
Do you like
I like
cars?
a good truck. I like a good truck.
Like a good truck. If you had $1 billion, you could buy the new Porsche 718 Boxer for you and 13,350 of your closest friends.
I don't know if I'm fitting inside a Porsche Boxster so well.
No, yeah, we're not boxer men. We're
like I can't like supercars.
We're box truck men.
No. I'll look at the supercar from the outside. Oh, that looks super fast. I'm not fitting in there.
Yeah, I definitely I agree with you there. If I don't think that the Boxster is for us, but feeling hungry, your $1 billion could buy 671 million burritos from Taco Bell. You know, back in my day, it would have bought 1.2. They were like 89 cents.
1.2 billion.
From Taco Bell. So that's enough to feed every single person in Japan, Germany, France, Sweden, Palestine, Ghana, Spain, Poland, Australia, South Africa, Brazil, and every single one of your neighbors living in the greater Atlanta metropolitan area. Or my neighbors, I should say. For you, you live in LA, right? Lower Alabama.
LA, that's right. Yeah. That's enough to what? Feed them one burrito?
Yeah, but if you cut it in half, it's like 2 burritos. Burritos are like worms.
I can't eat more than 1.5 before I got to go to the bathroom for Taco Bell.
Just like a worm. So speaking of burritos, as a sidebar here, if you think you've had a burrito until you go out to New Mexico, I've got family, brother-in-law stationed out there where I did that talk, and I love them. But the whole reason I go out there is green chili breakfast burritos. I'm just going to be honest. I haven't had a bad one. I've ate in like 7 different restaurants out there, and there's nothing better than green chili breakfast burritos. And with $1 billion, I could buy almost 700 million of them. So, but let's say you wanted to give your $1 billion to charity. If you gave away $1 per second, it would take you.
About?
Yeah. But if you give it to charity, if you gave away $1 per second, it would take you over 16 minutes to give away $1,000. It would take over 11 and a half days to give away 1 million, and over 31 years to give away all 1 billion. So that's when I tell people that the difference between $1 million and $1 billion is it takes less than 12 days to count to 1 million in 31 years. Like, because I think people mentally, you get into those big numbers and you stop being able to visualize as well. And so for some reason, I think a lot of people assume that it's like 100 million, but it's not. But like subconsciously, you think it's just, a much smaller number than it is. But you can count to 1 million in 11 and a half days, and if you try to count to 1 billion, 31.7 years. So let's do it. No.
The amount of time I think about how much 1 million is versus 1 billion versus 1 trillion is almost non-existent.
Well, I've started it now. Welcome to the freak show, buddy.
You actually have. I'm like
see, I knew it. The first time you really get it, you'll never forget it. It was like, for me, the first time I ever read about time dilation. I'm like, I've not been able to stop thinking about it ever. And I don't understand it, but I can explain it to other people. But even still, to give away 23.2 billion, that would take 735 and a half years. So these 3,000 service officers have secured that amount of money for veterans in just 1 year. $1 billion in 1 year. That's pretty astounding. But in addition to the initial claims assistance, the American Legion provides free representation for veterans who appeal VA decisions. Through November 30th, 2025, the Legion's appeals team in Washington, D.C. and Indianapolis handled 11,615 cases for the year and secured $48.4 million in retroactive benefits for veterans and surviving spouses, where appeals were successful. Training for the American Legion service officers is made possible through donations to the American Legion Veterans and Children's Foundation. We'll have links in our show notes where you can find a service officer to help you with your claim or donate to the Veterans and Children Foundation. So there you go. We got the show notes and you can support it.
Outstanding. Bringing in that dollar bill, y'all. All right.
I want to add one more thing, actually. If people are going to charge you for this service, be very careful. Do your research. If people are going to charge you, because a lot of times what they'll do is say, hey, if you just give us 10% of the bulk pay you get from the last 8 years that you've been fighting for this benefit, or whatever your back pay is, those people get a huge chunk of change and they're not going to do anything any better than the American Legion can do it. So there, I'm done off my soapbox.
Nice PSA, Joe. Okay, here we are, the end of season 6. What's your season 6 personal thoughts here at the end, and any holiday wishes that you have?
As hard as this year has been in a lot of ways, I've taken control of myself in a way that I don't think that I did before. And part of that is seeing all these incredible people that we talk to and what they're doing. It reminds me of the impact that we can have. And it reminds me that for so long I've given of myself in ways that have filled my spirit up, but I've also let it get too out of whack. The balance has gotten too far out of whack, and I haven't done anything just selfish for me in a long time. And what I found is, as I started making myself do things that I wanted to do, that I've always dreamed of doing, like writing and narrating and things like that, it's actually made me better at giving again, and better. It's like it's done something really, really special for me. This past year has been something that has opened my eyes up to a lot of things, the impact that I can have, not just on veterans. As a corpsman, that's what I want to do, is impact people's lives in a good way. But also it's reminded me that I need to, put my proverbial spiritual gas mask on before I help other people too. And I needed that. I've been getting tired, it's been sneaking up on me, and I'm glad to be in a better place. I'm busier, but I'm happier.
It's great, Joe. Appreciate that.
You're great. Appreciate you.
Appreciate you showing up so authentically and being so open and vulnerable and really sharing your medicine. I know I've certainly been the recipient of it, and so many of the listeners. And I know we kind of kicked off the show with favorite episodes, and we kind of talked about what we get to see week in and week out here in the specialness of it. And so I would reflect on that. But then kind of what you were saying is, we have our professional lives outside of here and our personal lives. And, for me personally, losing dad this year, it's been one of the hardest years, of my life, and just how this team showed up during that time, and just the time needed to heal with that, but still, be in this middle age, here in our 40s, and we have so much pulling at us professionally, our marriages, and our children, and, you like, where can you go and how can you get, filled up and recharged? And so, yeah, I mean, here at the end of the season, and also, talking about the note, going out to the soldiers and the challenges that folks have at this time of year. I guess what I would say is, for anybody that's lost somebody, period, specifically this year, it's going to be the first Christmas, without them, first holidays. And that's what folks have said to me is, that's always the hardest and the most challenging, and a little bit more time. There's never really total healing that happens from it. You always hurt, You always miss that, person. You always wish that they could be back, but you don't want them back, in the state that they were in, or suffering. And it's just this weird thing of life. And so I guess, I'm so grateful, for this life and everything in it, this show and all the opportunities, and just being able to come together, in community and engage. And I think that's what makes the challenging times, bearable. That, and, for me personally, my faith in
Yeah.
faith in Christ, and being able to lean on that so heavily, this past year. And so just an encouragement and just compassion for those that have gone through something similar, going through something similar. You're not alone. We're all in this together. And it's been an absolutely great season 6. That
Yeah.
is a wrap for us for season 6. We're so thankful for you guys hanging out with us for another year. Great season. If you do miss us during the holidays, you can always subscribe to our podcast, our newsletter, or send us mail and guest recommendations at legion.org/Tango Alpha Lima. We'll see you in 2026. Happy holidays. Merry Christmas. We'll see you soon.